The sun dipped low over the rolling hills of Kingsvale, a small wine country town known for its lavender fields, honey-colored vineyards, and the quiet dignity of its old-world charm. Emilia Roth stood at the edge of the terrace, her gaze scanning the garden below where final touches were being placed for the evening's vow renewal ceremony. Strings of war medicine bulbs crisscrossed between oak trees. Linen-covered tables shimmered with glassware. An open-air quartet rehearsed softly under a vine-draped pergola. It was exactly as she had imagined, a celebration of 5 years of marriage, growth, and shared dreams with her husband, Daniel. Emilia had poured herself into planning this evening for nearly 6 months. Every flower, dish, and music cue was intentional. Not just for show, but a tribute to the life they had built together in their restored vineyard home, the Emberlight Estate. Guests were due to arrive in less than 3 hours, a collection of close friends, extended family, and longtime colleagues. It was meant to be intimate, personal, magical. But that magic was under siege by one unwelcome element. Celeste Roth had arrived unannounced 4 hours early. Really, Emilia? Celeste sighed as she wandered across the lawn, her designer heels poking holes in the turf. Wildflowers and open air? You know the wind picks up after 5. I told Daniel the Foxglove Ballroom would have been more dignified. Emilia offered a tight smile, her clipboard pressed to her side like armor. We wanted something that felt like us. And the vineyard's always been a part of our story. Celeste's lips pinched as she eyed a bouquet of pale yellow billy balls and chamomile. Yes, well, your story is certainly unconventional. She ran her manicured finger along the edge of the place card and flicked it back in place. I suppose it's charming in a rustic way. That was the way with Celeste, digs disguised as concern, sabotage veiled in civility. Since the moment Emilia had entered her son's life, Celeste had found ways to imply she was unfit. Not polished enough. Not accomplished enough. Certainly not healthy enough. Celeste had once introduced Emilia at a holiday gala as Daniel's little artist friend, despite Emilia running one of the most in-demand boutique event firms in the state. Her passive-aggressive war had escalated over the years, from undercutting Emilia's contributions in front of family to making pointed remarks about her chronic health condition, a rare autoimmune disorder that flared with stress and required consistent medication. I'll just take a quick inventory of the wine cellar, Celeste said airily, moving toward the back entrance of the cottage where Emilia had been staying for the week leading up to the event. I know this year's vintage has some promise. If not too acidic, of course. You don't need to, Emilia began, but the door had already clicked behind her. It wasn't until 45 minutes later, with the final details nearly done, that Emilia remembered it was time for her 3 p.m. dose. Her doctor had been clear, consistency was key. Without her twice-daily medication, flare-ups could be sudden and debilitating, fever, joint pain, dizziness. The last thing she needed during tonight's event. She stepped into the cool, stone-walled kitchen of the cottage. The sun through the stained-glass window splashed across the counter where her pill bottle waited, exactly where she'd left it after breakfast. But something was wrong. The bottle felt heavier than usual. When she shook it gently, the sound was off. Lighter. Less dense. Emilia frowned. She opened it, and her breath caught. The pills were not hers. She poured a handful into her palm. Instead of the soft blue oblong capsules she had taken for 3 years, they were perfectly round, unmarked white tablets. No scent. No coating. No prescription markings. She stared for several seconds, her pulse beginning to rise. She looked around the room as if the correct pills might appear in some corner. Her medication wasn't just preventative, it was vital. And someone had tampered with it. No one had access to this room today except staff. And Celeste. A bitter taste rose in her throat. Celeste had always spoken of Emilia's illness as if it were a character flaw. A weakness. A burden Daniel should be free of. She once suggested Emilia's condition might be partly psychological, a product of artistic temperament. Emilia forced her shaking hands to set the bottle down. Her backup supply. She always traveled with a mini dose kit in her purse, for emergencies like travel delays or overnights. She dug through the structured handbag she'd brought down for the reception and exhaled when she found the small white pill case tucked safely in a side pocket. Popping open the case, she swallowed 2 capsules dry and leaned against the counter, steadying her breath. The fear began to morph into anger. Then clarity. Celeste hadn't just come early to supervise. She came to sabotage. Emilia glanced at the clock. 2 hours until guests arrived. She had options: call Daniel and tell him everything, Call off the event. Confront Celeste head-on. But Celeste was cunning. She would feign confusion, claim concern, or worse, accuse Emilia of imagining things. And if she derailed the event, Emilia knew exactly who would be blamed. No. The evening would proceed. But she would be watching. Documenting. She pinned her auburn curls into place, smoothed her emerald gown, and applied her favorite coral lipstick. Her smile in the mirror didn't quite reach her eyes. As she stepped back into the world of fairy lights and wine glasses, the air smelled of lavender and sun-warmed earth, but Emilia carried a storm in her chest. The perfect evening would go on. Only now, it was a battlefield dressed in silk and candles. And she would not lose. As the first notes of the string quartet drifted into the air and the sun sank lower behind the hills, Emilia wove through the courtyard like a ghost in emerald silk. Guests had begun to arrive, laughing, sipping white wine, marveling at the view, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept one eye on the terrace and the other on Celeste. The older woman had changed into a cream lace dress with pearls at her throat, her white blonde hair swept into a French twist that Emilia was certain took 2 hours and a stylist. She smiled graciously at arriving guests, hugging with one arm, offering air kisses with the other. To anyone watching, Celeste Roth was the picture of Southern grace and old money warmth. But Emilia knew better. And she wasn't just going to let it pass. Not this time. After double-checking with the caterers and welcoming a few friends from Daniel's firm, Emilia made her way to the cottage again, this time not for medication, but for evidence. Celeste's purse had been left carelessly draped on a velvet bench in the guest bathroom earlier. Emilia remembered it distinctly. If the pills were anywhere, they'd be there. She paused at the doorway, her breath tight in her chest. This felt like a violation, but then again, so was having your prescription medicine deliberately swapped out. Inside the bathroom, everything was pristine. Sunlight filtered through linen curtains and glowed on the marble sink. Emilia moved quickly, opening the large beige handbag and rummaging gently until her fingers brushed a familiar plastic container, her bottle. The real one. Nestled at the bottom next to a velvet pouch and Celeste's travel perfume. Emilia's heart pounded. She snapped a photo on her phone, then another, with the pills clearly labeled. She turned the bottle over, capturing her name and dosage, before slipping everything back into place exactly as she found it. She returned to the reception with her jaw set. Celeste was at the outdoor bar, chatting with the sommelier. Emilia lingered nearby, pretending to check on the wine menu. Make sure the Bulgura Reserve is only served during the toasts, Celeste instructed, her voice honeyed but firm. And only to select tables. I've provided a bottle of my personal vintage, it's in the cooler. The sommelier nodded. Yes, ma'am. It's already been marked, just like you requested. Good. Celeste smiled. I'd be heartbroken if it ended up in the wrong hands. Emilia stepped away, her thoughts racing. A personal bottle? Marked? She waited until the bar was unattended, then approached the cooler behind it. Inside were 3 bottles of Domo Bulgur, a vintage champagne from the Loire Valley. One stood out, a faint navy blue dot marked the base with a circle of permanent marker. Celeste's. Emilia remembered the argument they'd had months ago, when she'd decided on a California sparkling for the event. Celeste had called it bubbly soda water and insisted on her own French vintage, even offering to pay. Emilia had agreed reluctantly, mostly to avoid another verbal sparring match. But now, every instinct screamed something was off. She didn't open the bottle, yet. Instead, she made a mental note of its location and slipped away. Just as Daniel's best friend, Luca, arrived with his wife, Emilia greeted them warmly, her smile back in place. The evening unfolded gracefully. Fairy lights glowed, laughter floated over clinking glasses, and the staff moved like shadows. Guests complimented everything, the food, the decor, the romantic vineyard air. Emilia drifted from group to group like a dancer in a dream, never too far from the bar or Celeste's orbit. And Celeste? She held court near the rose trellis, recounting tales of Daniel's childhood, including selective edits that subtly excluded Emilia. She laughed, sipped sparkling water, and occasionally glanced toward the wine bar. When dinner was called, the guests filed toward long banquet tables beneath strings of lights. Platters of roasted chicken, rosemary potatoes, and heirloom vegetables made their way down the tables. Daniel, looking dashing in a navy suit, took Emilia's hand under the table. Everything's perfect, he whispered. You've outdone yourself. She smiled. You helped. Nah. This is all you. He kissed her fingers. Even Mom's being tolerable. Emilia's smile faltered. If only he knew. After the main course, the sommelier approached Emilia discreetly. "Ma'am, Mrs. Roth said we should begin uncorking her champagne." "For the toasts?" "Yes," Emilia replied calmly, her voice light. "But I'll take care of it." She intercepted the bottle herself and walked it back to the small wine cellar below the terrace. There, among the racks and limestone walls, Emilia took a deep breath and stared at the marked bottle. She hesitated for only a moment before executing the switch. She replaced Celeste's marked champagne with an identical bottle from the same vineyard, a backup bottle Emilia had stored for emergencies. Whatever was in Celeste's bottle would now remain sealed and untouched. Celeste would be drinking clean, unaltered champagne tonight, though she would believe it to be her own. The trap was reset. Back upstairs, Emilia handed the bottle to the sommelier. "This is the one she requested. Please serve it only to her table." "Of course." Emilia returned to her seat just as Daniel rose for the toast. His voice was warm, proud, and a little emotional as he spoke of their journey, the early days of their love, the challenges they'd faced, and the bond they'd strengthened through it all. "To the strongest, kindest, most breathtaking woman I know," he finished, raising his glass. To Emilia. Everyone toasted. Glasses clinked, and champagne flowed. Celeste, smiling smugly, lifted her glass and took a long, satisfied sip. And then, at the far end of the table, Luca coughed. Then again. He stood suddenly, his face tightening. I need to, excuse me." He rushed from the table, followed by two other guests seated near the standard bottles. Emilia's pulse quickened. All three had been drinking from the general wine selection, not Celeste's private bottle. Guests began to murmur. Celeste tilted her head, confused. She sipped again, slower now. Her expression shifted. From contentment to confusion. From confusion to fear. She wasn't reacting. But others were. Emilia's breath caught. Celeste hadn't planned to poison herself. She had planned to make Emilia look negligent. Maybe to cause an allergic scare. A tainted bottle. A food mishap. But she'd mislabeled the target. And now her plan had detonated in the wrong direction. The candlelight shimmered against glass and silver as soft music played, but the illusion of perfection had shattered. Across the table, two more guests stood, their faces pale, their movements hurried. A woman clutched her stomach as she muttered an apology, leaving behind her untouched dessert. Emilia stood too, but not in panic. She moved with deliberate calm, weaving between tables, murmuring reassurances, passing out napkins and glasses of water. Guests whispered, "Food poisoning? A bad batch of wine?" She feigned concern and confusion, all the while watching Celeste. The older woman remained seated at her table, a picture of forced elegance. She was still sipping her drink, but her hand trembled slightly now. Her brows knit in suspicion. Her plan, whatever it had been, was unraveling, and she couldn't understand why she wasn't the one being cared for, the one collapsing, the one at the center of the chaos. Emilia knew. Celeste had laced the general champagne. Maybe with something mild, just enough to cause discomfort. A disruption. A scandal, even. Perhaps she'd hoped it would make Emilia seem irresponsible, or unfit to manage a simple party, much less a household or a future family. But now it was Celeste's own guests, her allies, who suffered. And she had no explanation. As the affected guests were tended to, none requiring more than rest and hydration, Emilia made her way back to the bar. The sommelier was wiping down glasses, worry creasing his brow. "That champagne," Emilia said in a low voice. "Mrs. Roth's private bottle. Where is the original?" He looked up. "The marked one? Still unopened in the cellar, I think. You had me pour from the other bottle instead. Good. I'd like you to do something for me." She pulled a clean glass from the rack. "Pour from that marked bottle now. Just one glass. And let me deliver it." The sommelier hesitated, but nodded. When he returned with the poured glass, Emilia accepted it with steady hands and crossed the patio to Celeste's table. Most guests were either helping those affected or whispering in quiet clumps beneath the terrace arches. Celeste was alone. "I noticed you haven't touched your dessert," Emilia said pleasantly, setting the glass down before her. "Maybe a fresh pour will cheer you up. From your personal reserve. Marked and everything." Celeste glanced at the bottom of the glass. Her eyes narrowed, recognition flashed. She gave Emilia a long, calculating look. And then, sipped. It was just a taste at first. A test. She seemed to relax slightly, still unsure, but convinced that things were returning to her control. Emilia smiled. And waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Dessert was served to those who remained. Daniel gave a heartfelt thank you speech, unaware of the tensions humming just beneath the surface. The candle flames flickered in the breeze as stars pricked through the twilight sky. Then Celeste shifted. It started subtly, her lips parted, and she set her glass down with a slightly clumsy clink. She touched her stomach. Then her chest. A faint grimace. Her composure cracked. Excuse me, she murmured, rising unsteadily. She turned, attempting to leave quietly, but her gait was off, slightly hunched, off balance. Guests looked on, some with concern, others too busy laughing at Luca's return, now clutching ginger ale and sheepishly apologizing for his earlier exit, to notice her awkward retreat. Emilia caught Daniel's eye across the table. Is she okay? He asked, already standing. I'll check, Emilia said quickly. She might just need some air. But she followed Celeste inside, not out. The older woman had fled to the upper cottage level, locking herself in the guest bathroom. Emilia knocked once. No answer. Celeste? A pause. Then a muffled voice, go away. You're unwell, Emilia said softly. Should I call a doctor? You switched them, Celeste hissed from behind the door. You switched the bottles. Emilia leaned closer. I'm sorry. Are you saying someone tampered with your champagne? Her voice was as cold and polished as crystal. Because that would be serious. Illegal, even. Who would do something like that? You knew, Celeste spat. You planned this. No, Emilia replied smoothly. But I did find my medication in your purse. That was a surprise. Silence. I took photos. And I still had the bottle. And now, the bottle of champagne you had marked as your own? Also photographed. Also sealed. Another silence, this one longer, heavier. You have no proof. I don't need to use it, Emilia said, keeping her voice calm but firm. Unless you give me a reason to. Celeste didn't answer. Emilia stepped back from the door. I'll tell Daniel you're feeling ill, she said. He's worried. The party's ending soon, but I can box up a slice of cake for you. No response. Just the quiet shuffle of someone sitting down, defeated. Back at the reception, the energy was winding down. The music had softened. Guests lingered for final drinks, sharing stories under the vines. Emilia moved with renewed grace, lighter now. Daniel met her at the foot of the steps. Is she okay? She's not feeling well. I think the heat and the excitement were too much. He nodded, sighing. She's intense. I wish she'd just let you be. Emilia glanced toward the upstairs window, where Celeste's silhouette could just be seen behind the curtain. She will, Emilia said. Eventually. The night closed gently. The toasts were completed, the cake sliced and passed around, laughter resumed. Celeste did not return. By the time the last guest had gone and the quartet packed up their instruments, Emilia was alone under the pergola, sipping her wine and watching the stars. Daniel came to sit beside her, quiet for a moment. She's never going to like me, is she? Emilia asked. Daniel didn't reply right away. She doesn't have to, he said finally. But she does have to respect you. Emilia smiled. She will. One way or another. 2 days later, a cream-colored envelope arrived at Emilia's doorstep. The handwriting was unmistakably Celeste's, angular, rigid, the sort of script one might expect from a woman who monogrammed her linens and corrected grammar in dinner conversation. Inside, the note was brief. Emilia. I regret to inform you I'll be traveling through the holidays this year and won't be available for Thanksgiving or Christmas gatherings. Please extend my regards to Daniel. Celeste Roth. Emilia pinned the card to the corkboard in the kitchen, right next to a to-do list for the winter wine tasting event she was curating in December. Her smile was small but satisfied. Not because she had won, but because Celeste had finally retreated, on her own terms, or so she thought. It had taken a precise combination of resistance, composure, and quiet retaliation to turn the tide. And Emilia had learned something in the process. People like Celeste thrived in environments where their cruelty could masquerade as concern, where their sabotage was invisible, or worse, forgivable. The only way to end the cycle was to strip away their ability to operate in the shadows. And she had done just that. After the party ended, Daniel had taken Celeste home at her request. Emilia stayed behind to supervise the cleanup, but more importantly, to prepare. First, She gathered the sealed bottle of marked champagne, Celeste's original, unopened. She placed it in a Ziploc bag and labeled it with the date and time. Then she downloaded the photos she'd taken of her real medication inside Celeste's purse and moved them into a private, encrypted folder on her cloud drive. But the final piece was what sealed everything together. Emilia retrieved a copy of the security footage from the motion-activated garden cameras Daniel had installed the month prior. On it, a clear image of Celeste stepping behind the bar, alone, then uncorking bottles and pulling something from her handbag. The exchange was brief, subtle, but unmistakable. It was enough. She packaged everything into one folder and sent it to her own email with a time-stamped subject line, Insurance, Roth Vineyard Incident. No one needed to see it. Not yet. But if Celeste ever decided to play games again, publicly or privately, Emilia would have every angle, every fact, and every pixel of footage required to protect herself. And that was enough. That weekend, Daniel remained blissfully unaware of the full extent of what had transpired. He knew only that some guests had suffered mild illness, that Celeste had taken it poorly, and that Emilia had handled the crisis with grace and precision. He'd even told her, later that night, "You're the calm in every storm, Em. I don't know how you do it." She hadn't answered. Because the truth was, she hadn't always been this calm. The earlier years of their marriage had tested her. She'd often second-guessed herself, internalized Celeste's jabs, and even questioned whether her illness made her a liability. But not anymore. Not after enduring years of thinly veiled contempt dressed up as family concern. The anniversary party had changed something fundamental. Celeste had crossed a line, one Emilia couldn't allow to be blurred again. When Sunday evening arrived, Daniel joined Emilia on the back patio for a final glass of leftover wine. The vineyard below them shimmered in moonlight, rows of grapevines stretching like silk ribbons through the valley. "She called me earlier," he said. "Said she's going to Europe for the winter. Vienna, then London." "Sounds lovely," Emilia said without looking up. "She also said she's not sure she'll be back for your birthday in January." "That's all right. I wasn't planning on throwing another party," she replied dryly. Daniel chuckled. "She's complicated." Emilia sipped her wine. "No. She's calculating. There's a difference." He gave her a long look. "You're not telling me everything." "No," Emilia admitted, turning to face him. "But I will. When I'm ready." Daniel reached for her hand. "I trust you. I always have." And that was the difference between him and his mother. Daniel trusted. Believed. Loved without condition or manipulation. It's why Emilia fought so hard to protect their world, not just the marriage, but the life they'd created outside the reach of expectations they never agreed to. As November rolled in, the air turned crisp. Celeste didn't send a follow-up note, but a mutual cousin posted on social media a photo of her boarding a plane to Munich, bundled in furs and scowling at the camera. Emilia showed it to Daniel, who raised an eyebrow and said only, "Looks chilly." Thanksgiving came and went peacefully. Christmas followed with a cozy, fireside gathering of friends and Emilia's side of the family. No passive-aggressive toasts, no rearranged seating charts, and no hidden agendas. And then came New Year's Eve. Emilia threw a small party, just 20 guests this time, all carefully vetted. At midnight, as the vineyard echoed with cheers and the pop of corks, Daniel pulled her close and whispered, "Best year yet." She smiled. "Because of who's not here?" "No," he said. "Because of who still is." That night, after the guests left and the fire had burned low, Emilia opened her email, added 2 more files to the insurance folder, a recent doctor's note confirming her medication schedule and a screenshot of a toxicology test she'd quietly run on the open champagne bottle Celeste had nearly served. The results showed traces of castor bean extract, unusual, bitter, and potentially dangerous in high quantities. A calculated dose, enough to cause short-term gastric distress and dizziness. Easily masked by food and drink. Nearly impossible to trace without testing. And now it was documented. All of it. As she logged off, Emilia realized the most important thing: she no longer feared Celeste. Not her judgments. Not her plots. Not her reputation. Because now, she had the truth. And it was stronger than any poison. Spring returned to Kingsvale with a painter's touch, soft pastels over hills, golden light spilling across vineyard rows, and the scent of apple blossoms dancing through open windows. For Emilia, it marked not only a new season but the beginning of a new chapter, one where peace was no longer a fragile hope but a lived reality. It had been nearly 4 months since the anniversary party, and Celeste Roth had not returned. There were no unexpected visits, no pointed emails, no silk-wrapped invitations to luncheons where her disapproval hung heavier than the chandelier. The silence wasn't just a relief, it was liberation. Emilia had worried, at first, that the quiet was temporary. That Celeste might regroup, return with another plan wrapped in civility and lace. But time passed, and the stillness held. The absence of conflict was so foreign that it felt almost suspicious at first, like stepping into a room where a long buzzing noise had just stopped. But the truth was simpler than that. Celeste had realized she'd lost control. And Emilia had made it perfectly clear, without ever raising her voice, without a single public accusation, that there were lines not to be crossed. Lines backed by evidence, resolve, and quiet power. Now, Emilia found herself embracing joy without flinching. On a bright Saturday afternoon in early May, she stood in the courtyard of Emberlight Estate once again, not for a dramatic showdown or carefully plotted event, but for something simpler, a spring garden lunch with close friends and a few local artists she was mentoring through her event firm's new creative residency program. Daniel moved through the kitchen behind her, setting out wine glasses and laughing with one of the interns. Their life, once shadowed by backhanded compliments and subtle sabotage, now unfolded freely, without the constant second-guessing that had once haunted Emilia. "Need more plates?" Daniel asked, brushing a kiss against her temple. "I've got them," she said, sliding the stack into his arms. "You handle the wine. They're expecting your legendary bottle speech." He smirked. "I've got at least one guest convinced I'm a sommelier in disguise." Outside, the tables had been arranged in long rows beneath wisteria-draped pergolas. Handmade clay vases held wild blooms plucked from the hillside. Local cheeses, breads, and fresh-picked fruit filled vintage serving boards. It wasn't a production, it was personal, relaxed, and beautiful in its simplicity. And no one had tried to rearrange the seating. As guests began arriving, Emilia felt something in her chest she hadn't felt in years, complete ease. She welcomed them barefoot on the flagstone patio, her linen dress catching the breeze, her laughter genuine. No forced smiles. No sidelong glances toward someone waiting to undermine her. At one point, she stepped away to check on the garden musicians, two violinists playing beneath an old olive tree. The notes floated like sunlight, and Emilia stood still, letting the sound settle in her bones. A tap on her shoulder broke the moment. It was Leah, a longtime friend and the estate's groundskeeper. "There's a delivery for you at the front gate," she said, brows furrowed. No signature. No note. Just a box. Emilia's heart skipped. Not in fear. In preparation. She walked with calm steps toward the gatehouse, where a small, square parcel sat on the bench. Plain brown paper. White string. She recognized the handwriting on the label immediately. Celeste. She hesitated only a moment before unwrapping it. Inside was a single object, a glass perfume bottle, Celeste's signature scent. The same one Emilia remembered from every hug, every over-perfumed room, every passive-aggressive visit. But the bottle was empty. No note. No message. Just that. Emilia stared at it for a long time. Then she smiled. The meaning was clear, though silent. Celeste's last gesture. A message of resignation. Or perhaps of defeat. The bottle was symbolic. Her weapon of choice, scent, presence, control, now left hollow. It wasn't an apology, but it was as close as Celeste would ever come. She carried it back inside, not shaken, not angry. Just curious. She placed it on a high shelf in the studio where she kept odd mementos from events past, corks, faded place cards, bits of ribbon. This, too, was part of her story. A reminder. Not of trauma, but of triumph. The lunch unfolded seamlessly. Guests mingled through the garden, sipping rosé and nibbling tartlets. A toast was offered halfway through, not dramatic, not ceremonial, just a simple tribute to friendship and renewal. Later, as Emilia sat with her bare feet in the grass and a half-glass of wine in hand, Daniel joined her. He leaned back on his elbows, the sun catching in his hair. "I like this version of us," he said. "What version is that?" "The one where we're not constantly bracing for drama. The one where we get to just be." Emilia tilted her head, watching the breeze ripple the leaves above them. "Me too. You think it'll last?" he asked, and she could tell he was speaking not just of Celeste, but of everything, peace, health, balance. "I think it will," she said. "Because I'm different now. Not waiting for the other shoe to drop. If it does, I'll be ready." But in the meantime, she reached for his hand. We live. He kissed her knuckles, then her wrist. We thrive. That night, as they tidied up together and the sun gave way to stars, Emilia paused one final time beneath the old oak tree in their garden. The same spot where, months earlier, she'd spotted Celeste making her move near the bar. The same tree that had silently witnessed the unraveling of a long war. She whispered to the branches, not as a ritual, but as a release. It's over. And it was. There would be other parties. Other seasons. Perhaps even other tensions. But this chapter, this battle for her place in Daniel's life, for her own autonomy and worth, had ended. On her terms. No longer a guest in her own home, Emilia now stood as its anchor. And there would be no more shadows darkening her celebrations. Only light. Only music. Only peace. Just as she had always envisioned.